Hi, I'm Dr. Marc Palen. Welcome to another Talking Empire podcast. I'm here with Professor Richard Toye, and today we're going to be discussing J.A. Hobson's Imperialism, a Study from 1902. Why did Hobson write Imperialism?
Well, of course, he was writing at the time of the Boer War, and that the book was a prequel, as it were, by two other books, one which was called The War in South Africa, one of which was called The Psychology of Jingoism. And so it was, I think it was substantially motivated by a sense of outrage and opposition to what he saw as the corruption of the political process undertaken by economic interests. And although, of course, the Boer War was popular with a very important section of the British people, there was also a smaller but nonetheless vocal minority of the so-called pro-Boers who were opposed to the war or critical of its conduct. And to some extent, Hobson was tapping into that sentiment and those themes.
Yeah, I mean, this aspect of economic interests and imperialism, it seems really important to the theory that he's trying to say to develop here.
Yeah.
Can you describe Hobson's theory of imperialism?
Yes, well, essentially, this was an argument about underconsumption, as it was called, or over-saving. That is to say that there was capital which, in Hobson's view, couldn't find an outlet in the domestic market and therefore sought outlets abroad and did this essentially by sort of influencing or corrupting the political process in order to drive forward imperial expansion. It's also worth mentioning a sort of reprehensible aspect of his theory or of his writings, which that in his attacks on capitalists there was also an anti-Semitic dimension as well. Although it is less prominent in Imperialism than in his book, which I mentioned earlier, The War in South Africa, for example.
Yeah, and you mentioned this corruptive aspect. It seems to me this is different from, say, V.I. Lenin's subsequent critique of imperialism, in which it's an inevitable part of capitalism that is imperialism is, whereas Hobson is pointing to this corruptive dimension. And so, would you say that?
Yeah, he's not looking for revolution. He's looking for reform, but arguably nonetheless quite drastic reform. He isn't opposed to all forms of imperial expansion in all conditions, sees the settlement of Australia as being okay because this is essentially a community of free white people. And I think that tags back to another aspect of his thought, which is that although in many ways this looks like quite a radical development in terms of his arguments, which indeed do prefigure Lenin in certain ways, nonetheless he's coming out of a Liberal Party or British liberal critique of imperialism with a capital I, which had been present since, in particular, Gladstone's Midlothian campaign of 1879 to 80, and had elements of where it was present prior to that as well, and so that he's not coming completely out of a clear blue sky. That he is using tropes and rhetorical techniques which are certainly can be found in the language of liberal MPs, radical liberal MPs who came before him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important point too. This is very much a focus on certain types of what we might call formal imperialism, more so than informal, isn't it? But why was it that his critique became so influential, do you think?
Well, I think it certainly touched a nerve because, in spite of the initial enthusiasm for the Boer War and the very significant Conservative landslide election victory of 1900, of course, the war goes badly from the British point of view. It becomes more long and drawn out than anybody had expected as it sort of enters its kind of guerrilla phase, and that certainly helps to discredit the existing unionist government, eventually put some of the wind in the sails of the Liberal Party, which was as it moves towards its sweeping victory of 1906. And in fact, although of course the British Empire doesn't cease to expand, it does expand further in the final stages of World War I. as Britain takes over former Ottoman territories in the Middle East. Nonetheless, in the Edwardian period itself, there's no real appetite or enthusiasm for further British imperial expansion of the kind that had taken place in the 1880s and 90s, and therefore Hobson was somewhat on the crest of a wave where people hadn't become, for the most part, anti-empire, but they were nonetheless perhaps becoming a little bit more sceptical or questioning of some of the more sort of self-glorifying or jingoistic aspects of late 19th century British imperialism.
Professor Richard Toye, thank you.
Thank you.